Hear now these wonderful words of Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest the table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church.
Do you believe this world to be a friendly place? Do you believe that this world is supportive of our human hopes, our human dreams, our human aspirations? What do you think? Well, I ask you this question because I firmly believe that how you choose to answer it will determine a great deal about how you choose to live your life. For if you believe the world is a friendly place, then you'll live one way, trusting, confident, open to whatever comes your way. Whereas if you believe the world to be an unfriendly place, you'll live in a radically different way. Suspicious, uncertain, tentative. Now, of course, to answer the question, you have to have some input from somewhere to help you make the determination. And if you spent time reading the newspapers or watching the television news over the past few weeks with all that's going on in this world at this time, you would perhaps come to one decision. A mudslide in Washington, an airplane missing, civil war in Syria, unrest in Crimea. With all of this input we have from our world, from our media, from technology, it does seem to say the world is an unfriendly place, does it not? However, I would suggest if you were to allow the ancient words of scriptural testimony to influence your opinion, well, you may find that despite what you hear, despite what you see, despite all that's going on in this world around us, you might come to a different conclusion about this world and your place in it. Which is why we're so fortunate today to have as our lectionary text Psalm 23. Why? Because many biblical scholars believe that the 23rd Psalm offers the finest theological answer the biblical text has to offer to the question of, is this world a friendly place or not? Psalm 23, a small biblical jewel comprised in Hebrew of a mere 57 words. In fact, in English, it requires 122 words to try to approximate the same power and to convey the same comfort. Why? Because the Hebrew language possesses a concrete muscularity, which means that every single word is power-packed and comprised of several different parts of speech. So for the next few minutes, along with Rabbi Harold Kushner, I want to attempt to unpack this psalm by pointing out the four truths I believe this psalm possesses for those of us who are struggling to decide if this is a friendly world or not. Truths I believe that can calm those of you who find yourselves worrying and fretting about the friendliness of the world. So the first truth that comes forward for me is in the opening line, the first line that reads, "The Lord is my shepherd." In other words, this psalmist is saying that despite this being a difficult, complicated, intricate, demanding, unpredictable, challenging, strenuous, grueling, and frightening world, we can get up every morning to face it, knowing that there is someone in this world who cares about us and tries to keep us safe. Or to put it another way, the psalmist is saying, we are not alone. Now granted, the newspaper headlines may speak of violence. Television may talk of tragedy. News bulletins may still be alarming. But we can face these things with courage and confidence, the psalmist suggests, by knowing we are not facing these things all by ourselves. Dr. Theodore Ferris of Boston, Massachusetts, tells a story which took place in the 1930s about a man, a friend of his, who he thought he knew rather well. He knew this man to be powerful and a successful businessman, the kind that makes decisions easily and always drove a hard bargain. One day, Ferris says he was having dinner with the man's son, and they were talking about him. The son revealed something new about his father. It seems that when the son was in the army, that he had made a terrible mistake. He got into trouble and was given a dishonorable discharge. The son said he knew what he had done disgraced his family, and he thought his father would be outraged. But he also knew that he had to tell him what happened. So I did, the son said to Dr. Ferris. I wired my father, I told him what happened, and he wired me back. What did your father say? Dr. Ferris asked the young man. The telegram had 3 lines in it, the son said. It read, I will stand by you no matter what happens. I will be there in the morning. Remember who you are. Now, do you hear the concentrated energy of love in those 3 sentences? I will stand by you no matter what happens. I will be there in the morning. Remember who you are. You see, when the psalmist claims that the Lord is my shepherd, he is claiming that yes, the world may be dangerous, and yes, we may go astray, but, God is there to take care of us, God is there to help us, period. God is there to help us, even as a shepherd, cares for the sheep in a world of dangerous predators and threats of accident. The world may be frightening, but it becomes less frightening when we know that God is here with us. Or as one writer put it so famously, sometimes God calms the storm, but sometimes God lets the storm rage and calms the frightened child. That's the first truth. We are not alone. The second truth jumps forth in this line, I shall not want. In other words, to face this difficult world, we need not worry and fret because we already have all the resources we need to face it. Now, some religions support renunciation of the world as a way to happiness, saying that if we do not want things, we will not be disappointed by not getting them. And that's really not what this psalm is promoting. It's simply saying that while our every extravagant desire may not be met, we will receive in this world, by God's generous hand, as much as we need. There's a wonderful piece of poetry called Dreams that I think shares this same notion. The poem goes, I've dreamed many a dream that never came true. I've seen them vanish at dawn. But I've seen enough of my dreams, thank God, to make me want to dream on. I've trusted many a friend that failed and left me to weep alone, but I've found enough of my friends, true blue, to keep me trusting on. I've sown many seeds that fell by the way for the birds to feed upon, but I've held enough golden sheaves in my hands to make me keep sowing on. I've prayed many prayers when no answers came, though I've waited patient and long, but answers have come to enough of my prayers to keep me praying on. Now, I don't know about you, but I can say this from my own experiences, that while I may not have palaces, while I may not have jewels, you know what? I do have enough. I do have such simple and fulfilling gifts in my life as green pastures and still waters and the restoration of my soul from time to time. And so like the psalmist, I too keep trusting on, and that is the psalmist's intent with this line, I shall not want. It is that we do keep trusting on, or as Rabbi Harold Kushner puts it, the Lord is my shepherd, what more do I need? For to desire things beyond that relationship is beside the point. So the second burst of truth, I shall not want. The third truth comes from this line, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. 1937, the famous Golden Gate Bridge was completed. As many of you know, at that time, it was the world's longest suspension bridge. The entire project cost the United States government $77 million. Well, during the process of constructing the first section of the bridge, very few safety devices were used, resulting in over 25 accidental deaths as the workers fell into the San Francisco Bay below. Well, the toll was so significant that something had to be done before the second section was built, and so an ingenious plan was arranged. See, the largest safety net in the world was made out of stout manila cordage and stretched out beneath the work crews, and it proved to be an excellent investment in the view of the fact that it saved the lives of almost 28 men who fell into that net without injury. Now, here's the interesting note. Did you know that work on the Golden Gate Bridge then went 45% faster since the workers were relieved from the fear of falling to their deaths? 45%. To fear no evil in the shadow of death is to affirm that we will make it through. Not that we will not despair, not that we will not struggle, but those things that cause that despair, those things that cause the struggle, they will not overtake us. Truly, there is much that threatens us in this world. For we all are one mammogram or PSA score or chest x-ray away from the shadow of death. We're all one car accident, one heart attack, one random act of violence. And yet this psalm says, it says, we will make it through. In fact, here's an interesting thought. Have you ever thought that perhaps it's even the knowledge of the impending danger itself that invests our life with meaning? Think about that for a moment. I mean, how do you face the shadow of death? Most scholars I know suggest that a person can respond to the inevitability of their death in three ways. One, we can choose the path of self-indulgence. Two, we can become despairing. What's the point of doing anything if we're just going to die? Or three, we can decide, since our days are limited, that we will make the most of them. And you see, that's what the psalmist, I think, is saying. The psalmist is saying that to walk through the valley of the shadow of death with God is to enhance this exquisite beauty that is life with the recognition that this life on earth is not going to last forever. As we trust God to take us from this life into the next. And when we live that way, when we are aware that we stand in the shadow of death all the time, then present life takes on new meaning. New meaning. That's the third truth from this psalm. Finally, the fourth one. The fourth truth that bursts forth is as follows. For those who are able to live like this, for those who are able to live believing they are not alone, believing that they have all their need, believing and not fearing what will be, then surely goodness and mercy will follow them all the days of their life, and they will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Wow. Someone asked me the other day, who knows me quite well, What I learned in the times when the bottom of my life fell out some time back, and my answer was immediate, it was without hesitation. I said, I learned in that deepest, darkest, dankest, depressing, desperate moment of my life, down there in the deepest bottom, that God is not only real, but God is there. And in that darkness, you can see with much more clarity than usual the true character of God. And what you see, I assure you, is not the God of fairy tales. It's not a Disney God. It's not a God with pictures we place on Sunday school walls. What we see in the deepest, darkest places is the kind of God that Jacob and Abraham and Sarah and David and Mary and even Jesus saw. Which may be why this is the concluding section of the psalm. The psalmist has saved the best for last in telling us that God's kindness, God's goodness and mercy are ever attendant. For this is the nature of God, and we are a part of God's family. And God invites us into God's home, which is God's great heart. And we will dwell there forever and ever, where the privilege is to know God better and better and better by living with God. I wish you could have known my father. He died some 18 years ago. A wonderful storyteller, a Southern Baptist preacher who spit every time he talked. His favorite illustration was about the 23rd Psalm. I've heard it 5,000 times. I've told it 4,000 times, now 4,001. One day, a famous actor was the guest of honor at a social gathering where he received many requests to recite favorite excerpts from various literary works. And an old man down front in the crowd asked the actor to recite the 23rd Psalm. Well, the actor's recitation was something he would do, but he said to the old man, I'll tell you what I'll do. I will recite this on one condition. If I do it, you have to do it as well. The old man agreed. Well, as you might imagine, the actor's recitation was beautifully intoned with great dramatic emphasis, for which he received loud applause and whistles and cheers when it was completed. And then the old man slowly stood. Suspenders, wire-rimmed glasses, scuffed up shoes, a shirt tail slightly out in the back. He couldn't stand straight, but he stood as best he could. And when he finished uttering the 23rd Psalm, it was silent. Not a dry eye in the room. Because the audience understood they had just heard something magnificent. Later, someone asked the actor, what made the difference between his recitation of Psalm 23 and the old man's recitation? The actor replied, that's simple, really. You see, I know the psalm, but he knows the shepherd. And you see, folks, knowing the shepherd, that's what gives us insight into those truths that unveil the friendliness of the world because of God's great love for us. Is this world a friendly place? Is it supportive of our human hopes, our human dreams, our human aspirations? I would say yes. And how do I know? Because I've found that the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures and leads me beside still waters, and he restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I find I fear no evil because God is with me. And God's rod and God's staff, they comfort me. And then he prepares this table before me right in the presence of mine enemies, and he anoints my head with oil, and I find that my cup runs over. And then goodness and mercy, they follow me all the rest of the days of my life, telling me that one day, and showing me that one day, and encouraging me to believe that one day I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.